Hello, friends. I am Mohita Agarwal, a counselor and psychotherapist. My workshop, named Introduction to Positive Psychology, is scheduled for 26th October. When I sent out the advert for the same, a lot of people asked me, Positive psychology है क्या? इसके applications क्या हैं? इससे हमें क्या benefit मिलेगा? So I decided to make this video. Before we get started, we have to understand a little bit of the theory. Martin Seligman, who is the proponent of positive psychology, decided to focus more on fulfilled lives rather than on troubled lives. So he decided to look at what was going right with people rather than what was going wrong with people. So, positive psychology, as compared to other psychotherapies, is more solution based. The rest are more problem based. Martin Seligman talked about three types of happiness. The first one is about pleasant life. That is all very sensory and it is short lived. So, a lot of time people confuse short lived pleasures with happiness. So, it is very important to understand happiness is not about just an emotion, it is about a process. The second one is good life. In good life, we identify our strengths and align them to our goals, and we enjoy flow. We get into engagement, the state of engagement. The third life is the meaningful life, which is much beyond us, which is something much larger than you. Let us understand about positive emotions, which we spoke about in the pleasant life. Positive emotions like joy, pride, interest, contentment. So, when a person is in the positive emotion state, his awareness broadens, his attention increases, cognition increases, action increases, and it leads to social, physical, and intellectual resourcefulness. And this resourcefulness becomes a reserve for future emotional states. In fact, we can say that happiness is a resource. Let us take the example of joy. If you are in the positive emotion of joy, then it increases the urge to be more playful, the urge to be more creative, the urge to push your limits. In contrast, if we talk about negative emotions, your awareness becomes very narrow. Your actions become very specific. Your actions are more survival action as compared to the positive emotions. So we can also say that happiness is a resource. Okay, so science has established that staying in positive emotion is definitely more beneficial to us. But how to increase this positive emotion? Let us talk about the AIM model. A stands for attention, giving attention to the beautiful things in the world, to the beautiful people in the world. I stands for interpretation. Interpretation in the sense that try and understand the perspective of others too. M as in savoring the moments and not ruminating about it. So we can say that we can increase our positive emotions by our savoring skills, by our mindfulness. In other words, happiness can be created. So, thus, he developed a manual called CSV, that is the character strengths virtues. So, based on six virtues, he developed 24 character strengths. And this manual is extremely helpful. Now, how? So, there are a lot of people who don't identify their strengths, they're not aware of the strengths. Number one, you can take a questionnaire and become aware of your strengths. Number two, if I tell you today, write down 10 of your strengths, there are people who can't go beyond four or five. So, this helps you give language. What are the various strengths you have? Martin Seligman introduced the well being model of PERMA. So, if we have PERMA, that is PERMA, then we have the subjective well being. We have achieved happiness. So, let us understand what the PERMA model of well being is all about. P, as we've talked about, is positive emotions. So, positive emotions, when we give to somebody, is much more than when we receive something. Because when we give something, it is joy plus contentment, which is more meaningful. E as an engagement. So many people who have achieved flow and who have been immersed in their work and job, when asked what was the feeling like, they said there was no emotion, as if time just stood still. R is in relationship, meaningful relationships. If we don't have meaningful relationships, we cannot be happy. M as in meaningful life, thinking about others, dedicating ourselves to a cause which is larger than us. A as in accomplishment. So if a person doesn't have a goal, he cannot be happy. Now, keeping the PERMA model in mind, we will use this application in a case. And in the case, all these questions will be connected to the PERMA model. That is when we will understand the subjective well being about the person. Also, whenever the client comes to you, the most important thing is to keep the client in the positive emotions as much as possible. So, let us say our client is suffering from extreme anxiety due to the pandemic, and she comes to you. So, instead of asking, what is the problem I can help you solve? You can say, so what do you think is the goal for your session today? So, do you understand? Goal is completely the flip side of problem. There is a very powerful intervention in positive psychology called Design Your Day. So, you have to tell your client that the pandemic is over, they have found a vaccine, and it is 3 years after, and people are back to the new normal lives. Now, imagine, which place would you be in when you get up from bed on this day? With whom would you be? What else would you be doing? What would you like to inject in this day that would make you feel really, really good? You mentioned that you like singing. What step would you introduce to put more of this in your day? Now, if you realize all these questions are related to PERMA. Now, talking about staying in positive emotions, when we tell the person to imagine it, then the person connects to it on an emotional level and remains in positive emotions more rather than when we tell her to talk, which when she talks, she goes into a rational level. So, this is definitely more effective. Now, you can end the session by asking the question, so, what are your thoughts on helping others? That is so connected to the M of meaningfulness in your life. So, the person is anxious, is just worried about her safety during the pandemic, is not thinking about anybody else. So, this question makes a total mind shift. It can be so powerful for teachers, for trainers, for bosses, for parents. In fact, let me exemplify this. Once I heard a child when he was asked, "अब बड़े होके क्या बनोगे?" He says, "मैं तो बड़े होके एक जैगुआर खरीदूंगा." And the parents were laughing. Now, what a powerful tool positive psychology would be for the child and for the parent to understand that wealth is not equal to happiness. Happiness is a process, happiness is a resource, happiness can be created. Positive psychology has immense applications, has a lot of interventions, and I can teach you a lot more tools and techniques. So be there for my workshop on 26th October. I'm sure it'll definitely be beneficial to all of you. In fact, it's going to be beneficial to any human being.